Welcome to InPodsicated. In this inaugural episode, I talk with Miguel Esparza, the Spanish broadcaster of the Chicago Cubs, the Chicago Blackhawks, the Chicago Bears, and the Chicago Bulls. Miguel's a Humboldt Park native that takes us through his life journey and musical aspirations, such as working in radio and his passion for Elvis and the rise as the Spanish broadcasting voice of the Chicago teams. Stick with us as we get intoxicated with Miguel Esparza. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome the voice of the Cubs, Bears, Blackhawks, and the Bulls, Miguel Esparza. Welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
Man, I'm good. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be with you. And yeah, man, I'm excited to when you mention it that way, I hear like, okay, this is what I do, right? It's one of those things that I never imagined, but here I am.
It's very different when you hear someone else say your accolades or
Yeah,
your job
right,
titles.
right.
Like, man, I do all those things, and it's nuts.
Yeah, and I'm also the Spanish voice of GVSU football in Michigan Division II football program. So it's
Wow.
it's one of those. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So very happy to do that this first year that we're doing. It's a great team down there, and so it's been an amazing experience as well.
That's amazing. So before we get into your broadcasting career, I want to start at the beginning, and not when you were
Yeah.
born, but tell me about growing up in Chicago. Tell me about your family, the area you grew up in, and the schools you went to.
Yeah, well, family. My dad is from Mexico, Ciudad Juarez. My mom from Puerto Rico, so I'm from San Sebastián, Puerto Rico.
Nice.
And me, well, I grew up in the Humboldt Park area. It specifically was Ashland, division, no, Cortland in California.
Okay.
From there, I went to Yates School. It was, I don't even know, I probably like 2 years because our house burned down there.
Oh
So
wow.
then we ended up, yeah, yeah, yeah. We ended up moving to Pulaski in Cortland, and then we're there for a little bit. Went to Division in Hamlin, and Division in Hamlin saw me grow up. So I was there, for a very long period of time, and it was just obviously a rough neighborhood, right? But
Right.
but we were always, we were very tight knit family, and it was just one of those things that we always knew that we had to stay out of trouble. And my dad's just amazing. My mom's great. Everything they do to make sure that we were just in the right direction. And thankfully, we were able to get out of the neighborhood and no real problems, right? Because gunshots all night long, summer long. So it was one of those things that it was just like, man, it's scary at times, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we were able to get out and nothing, just from there, I graduated from Wells High School.
Okay.
And then graduated from the Illinois Center for Broadcasting, now called the Illinois Media School.
Right. So how did your parents try to keep you out of trouble? Essentially, because growing up in the Humboldt Park in the 80s and 90s, that's very hard to do because the gangs were the family, and they're like, "Come on, be with us. We're a family.
Right,
We're
right.
protecting our neighborhood."
Well,
So, how did your parents keep you out of that lifestyle?
I guess it was just the way that we were just growing up. I guess we were always together. We were always doing something as a family. So we were really never out by ourselves anywhere, not
Hmm.
even in the neighborhood. Yeah, growing up, once you're 13, 14, you go to the corner store and you see things, right? But you know in your mind that your family is not that way. So that's something that you don't look at, something
Hmm.
that you don't think, okay, maybe I could get into a gang, not even when I was in high school, so it's one of those things that just watching how my parents live their lives, that's the responsibility that we have to be good citizens as well.
That's amazing. Tell me about your experience at Wells because I did my student teaching there. Um,
Did you?
I
Nice.
did my student teaching about 2010. So
Okay.
and I knew I grew up in a neighborhood, so I knew everybody who went to Wells in different generations. So when they asked me, "Do you want a student teach and where do you want to do it?" They're like, "Oh, do you want these prestigious schools?" I'm like, "No, no, no, no. I want to teach in my neighborhood. I want to give back to my
Right.
community, and if I can teach in my community, I know I can teach anywhere." So give me a synopsis of what your high school experience was like.
Man, it was great. For me, it was great. I never had a problem with anyone. I
Hmm.
was the guy that was always singing down the hallways. I was the one that was always in band. I had great teachers. Mr. Thompson, the band director there, was amazing. Mr. Brown at gym, and Mr. Lewis. Like we had so many good teachers Mr. Rivera as well. Like great teachers that would always help us and guide us. And I actually was employed by the driver's ed trailer that used to be right behind Wells.
Nice, yeah.
So that was very good for me as well. It was one of those things that Coach K, the football coach, was always looking for me because I was a big guy, always been a big guy. And I was like, no, I don't want to play football, man. I'm making money. I was getting paid $6 an hour, no taxes, working for the school. I was like, no, man, I want to play football. I want to make money.
$6
So
an hour.
yeah,
Back in the
man,
day,
yeah, six
baby.
dollars
Back
an
in the
hour,
day.
tax free because I was working for the school.
Right.
So it was real good, and it was a real good experience. I do have very fond memories from Wells.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I want to just get into you talked about band, like you were singing
Yeah.
down, in the hallways. What was I mean, we're talking to you're a sportscaster now and you're talking about band. Was your aspirations more musical or was it more
Oh yeah.
sports wise?
It was music, 100%. I wanted to be a famous singer. I wanted to be on the big stage. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to perform. And at the end of the day, I do perform, right? So my,
Correct.
my worlds kind of collided,
Yeah.
right, with what I wanted to do. Not always do we get what we want, but I was able to explore a little bit within the music with different instruments and a little bit about my music career. We can call it that. I went into radio thinking exactly that. I was like, if I'm at a radio station, I can play my music and I can
Correct.
become famous, right? Like it doesn't work that way, but but that was the idea behind it, right?
Right.
So a couple of years into my radio career, I started in 2001. By 2007, I had put some money together for a CD, and I put a CD together,
Okay.
recorded in California. It was regional
Nice.
Mexican music, and so it's now on Spotify. You can listen to that as well.
Oh,
It's
we'll put
on
the link
there.
on there. We'll put the link on there. I
Um,
want to listen to this.
I performed around the Chicagoland area, the
Okay.
Aragon Ballroom. I
Whoa.
toured in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Yeah, so I did a little bit of what I wanted to do, right? So I did get that taste of it, and then later on in my career, actually January of 2023, I did something with the Blackhawks where it was just a conversation, and it became a thing where we were like, "Hey, man, you should do some Elvis sometime." I was like, "Yeah, I'll do Elvis, man." So I did an Elvis tribute show at the United Center during the
Whoa. It's
Blackhawks intermission.
huge.
Yeah. So yeah. So it was amazing because I'm a huge Elvis fan, and that was another thing. Growing up, it was my music idols were Juan Gabriel, Vicente Fernandez, Elvis Presley, and Banda Macho. So those were my guys, and yeah. So later on in my life, and in my whole period of radio broadcasting, there's always ups and downs, and I've always been active within, whether it be a voiceover or working remotely for different stations. I worked for radio stations in Mexico remotely,
Nice.
in Kentucky. But there was a period where I was just doing that remotely, and I really didn't have a full-time job. So I went to work at a casino as a blackjack dealer dressed as Elvis.
Whoa.
And after after I dealt for about an hour and a half, I would go up on stage and perform. So that was like my little fill of my entertainment, right? That's what I
Right.
wanted to do. And from there, a friend, a guy that became family to me, saw me at the casino and invited me to to go listen to his band. It was an oldies band. All these gentlemen were all in their 60s. They were
Mm-hmm.
older guys who,
Right.
when they were teens, they were playing in these
Garage
amazing
bands.
bands,
Yeah.
and so it was great, man. It was like I thought I could sing before, but after I met them and started working with them, because it went from you want to listen to the band to you want to come practice with the band to you want to be our lead
Lead
singer,
singer.
so it
Wow.
went in that, and it was real quick, right? So yeah, so I did that around the Joliet Plainfield area. We performed at Olympic Theater in Berwyn.
Oh wow.
We did
Okay.
an Elvis tribute show as well. So I got my taste of it, and even now, like I said, I did that with the Blackhawks. Like I still get my two worlds collide, where I'll sing at Wrigley, the seventh inning stretch, the
Mm-hmm.
national anthem. I did it at South Bend. I did it at Wrigley Field. So it's just one way or another, I'm always singing.
So are you still involved in the musical aspect? Are you still going out doing? I know you said 17 inch stretch and a national anthem,
Right.
but are you still doing some of that on the side for yourself, producing music or writing music?
No, I don't. I don't. Never wrote any music. I was always just a singer, right? And
Okay.
and played a couple of instruments. I could play the guitar, trombone, tuba.
Wow.
I could play. Yeah, I could get around the instruments, but I don't have time, man. It's
Yeah,
like
I
as
see
much as
that.
I would love to do that, right? You need the dedication of
Yes.
you have to go practice. You have to be able to do dedicate that time to it. So it's something that I don't have the time as much as I wish I did.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I want to talk about the challenges you faced breaking into the sportscasting industry or the sports industry. What were some of the challenges that you faced at the beginning of your career?
Well, here, my career is a weird one, right?
Hmm.
And the reason I say it is because I didn't go into radio wanting to do sports. So I'm not the guy that, a lot of people that we know are like, live, eat, breathe sports, right?
Hmm.
From when you were young until now. But that wasn't me. That wasn't, my thing. Like I said, it was music. Sports I've always loved. Obviously, growing up in Chicago, the Chicago Bulls of the '90s, you
Correct.
became such a huge fan, and we all wanted to be Michael, right?
Yeah,
And
always.
and then from there, yeah, that's the thing. So I grew up. I did play some basketball just in the alley of my house with my rim, and so it was one of those things that growing up, it wasn't like, oh, I want to broadcast sports. Like that never crossed my mind. There was nowhere in my imagination that I would do it. So that was something that just kind of I don't want to say fell into my lap, but kind of did. So it was 2013 when I first started broadcasting sports, and it was for the Chicago Bears. I used to work for a station called La Ley
Yep.
107.9 WLEY, and so I that's where I started my career. I was let go in 2009, I believe, when the economy crashed, and they
Cutting
couldn't
people.
pay,
Yeah.
so they wanted to bring in. Yeah. So anyway, so we went into that, and they called me in 2013, wanted me to come back, and I was like, well, okay. And I'm one to talk about my goals, right? And one of the things that I always let my future employers know is my goals. I want to make sure that they know what I'm looking for and my expectations. And
Right.
when I went in there, I told them, my one of my goals is to be a morning show host, but also I want to broadcast the Bears games. It was just something like I said, it wasn't like I dreamt about it or anything, but it was very interesting to me that there was a Spanish broadcast, and I was like, I'm at the station that does it, so I want to do it, right?
Hmm.
So once that happened, with 3 months in, I was the morning show host, and I was doing the Bears play by play.
Wow.
They they ended up making changes, but they knew that I was interested.
Hmm.
So they called me and they said, Miguel, do you have a demo for, broadcasting a Bears game? I said, yeah, absolutely. Which I didn't. I didn't have a demo. So I went on there. I opened up a old Bears game on YouTube, and
Yeah.
and I recorded myself, doing the play by play for it, and
Hmm.
sent it in. And next thing you know, Monday Night Football was my first game, Bears
Wow.
Packers. And I was
No way.
broadcasting.
That is
Yeah, yeah,
insane. I
yeah.
mean,
So
that's a hell of a jump into the deep water there with Bears
yeah,
Packers.
man.
But
Yeah,
were
yeah,
you
yeah.
you were
So it
familiar
was.
with the sport though? You knew the rules
Yeah.
and ins and
Yeah,
outs.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You always watch all these sports, like growing up once again in Chicago. I think everyone here is a Bears fan, and we all love the Bulls, and we all love the Cubs. I don't know if you're a Cubs fan or a Sox fan,
I'm a
but
Sox fan, but I
it's
watched the Cubs. I grew up as a Cub fan,
okay.
and then I switched
Did
over.
you?
And yeah, later
Okay.
on,
Okay, yeah. So, but
yeah,
sports drives us.
it
When
does
you're from Chicago, right? And
100%.
regardless of the team, I think that the one team that we all follow are the Bears, and
Correct.
that was big for me. I was always watching those games, so I knew. But it was just a matter of once they told me, okay, Miguel, you're on the broadcast. It was like, okay, I really have to like get in and read and see and translations of different words
That
and
was my next
and
question. How hard was it to
yeah.
translate? Oh, it's a false start.
Yeah, 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 and that's the thing. A lot of there's a lot of translations out there, but I've always trying to be me. I always try to make it to my. I accommodate to how I feel that it should be said. I don't
Mm-hmm.
follow anybody else in
Okay.
what they do and how they do it. So yeah, so that was one of the things that the first thing that I started looking at. Okay, how am I going to translate this? So I can't translate a touchdown. There's no
No,
translation for it.
no.
Like me specifically, I say when it's first and goal, primera, segunda oportunidad y zona de anotación, no, because
See.
that's where they're
Yeah.
going to go.
Yep.
So those are the little things that I adjust to where I know that my listeners are going to understand what I'm saying. And so it was just an adjustment, but it was amazing, and once I started doing it, I was like, man, I like this, right? And so that's where I started Bears. Then fast forward 2018, I started working for Univision,
Okay.
and at Univision they had all the teams. They had every sport: Cubs, Bears, Sox,
Mm-hmm.
Bulls, Chicago Fire. They had it all.
Right.
So and once again, going in when I got hired, I let them know like, hey, I did the Bears before I did the Bears broadcast. So if there's ever any opportunity to broadcast any of these teams, I'm more than ready. And sure enough, the guys that were there that would call, ask for days off and whatnot. Miguel, can you cover? Yes. Miguel, can you cover? Yes.
Mhm.
So and little by little, Miguel's covering so much that Miguel ends up being the guy, and that's how it was, and that's how it happened for all those teams that I broadcast now.
I mean that's crazy. Just and I think you've mentioned it in other interviews that I was watching, but this is also like when I watch a lot of documentaries on wrestlers, and they'll say, "Hey, can you do this or can you fill in here?"
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the biggest thing is saying yes to the opportunity and then figuring it out later.
Oh yeah,
They
yeah,
don't need to
yeah.
know you don't
And
know.
no,
It's fake
no,
it till
that's
you
that's
make it.
exactly it. Yeah, yeah, and that was the thing. Like, I look, and it's the perfect example is hockey, the Blackhawks. Growing up, I never watched hockey.
Yeah.
I never did. There was a period of time where the Blackhawks were trying to reach out to the Latino community, and when I was working with WLEY, we did a couple of broadcast remotes trying to invite people to go out. We were giving out tickets and whatnot, but it didn't go beyond that. It didn't go where I was like, oh, I'm going to start watching the Blackhawks. But when the championship run happened those
Yes.
years, everyone was watching. I didn't understand. It was just exciting. Chicago teams up there getting winning championships, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's always exciting. But I didn't know the sport, and same deal. My boss says, Miguel, can you cover hockey? Yes, absolutely. I love hockey. I didn't know anything, and I didn't. I had no idea, So I went on YouTube and searched, hockey 101, and that's where I started, just going through learning the rules and learning, the blue lines and what icing is, and
Yeah.
everything there can be. And this one's even harder because the translations, once again, it's not something that you can say, these words
It's not a
easily
literal
translate.
translation, right?
There's
Yeah. So the terminology
it's
doesn't really
different.
translate to the Spanish language,
No, no, no,
and that's a
not at
difficult
all.
thing. Tell me, so you get to the Blackhawks, and you're in the booth for the first time. Your first time
Yeah,
you're watching the Blackhawks live, I'm assuming, right?
right. Yep, yep. First
What
time
is
at the United
going
Center
through
for a
your
Blackhawks game.
mind as like, how did you think about like how am I gonna say these things? Like, are you nervous about play calling? Like, what's going through your mind?
Man, I'm super nervous. So the first game, I didn't go as play-by-play.
Okay.
So first game, I was analyst. So that
Okay.
was pretty cool. And Hector Lozano, who's like a legend in
Yes,
sports in
legend.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Hector, a great guy. Like, it's very hard to find great people within this industry. People that are not afraid that you're going to take their job.
Hmm.
That's one of the things that happens a lot in this industry where people are like, oh, I can't help this guy out because he could take my job, right?
Correct.
And Hector's not that. Hector was amazing. I walked in, I'm like, dude, I'm so nervous, man. He's like, dude, you're with me. I got you, man. You relax, enjoy it. I'm gonna take you with, So he was amazing in helping me get out there and be able to do it. And then um, pandemic hit, things changed.
Yeah.
Hector moved on to Telemundo
Right.
instead of Univision, and then Blackhawks fell on me, and so it was just one of those things that once again, I was very fortunate in many different ways, and to this day, Hector Lozano is like my real good friend, and I'm very appreciative of those little things because those go a long way, and this is a perfect spot to let anybody out there know, just don't don't hold back from from helping anyone, because at the end of the day, that's really what's gonna give you the satisfaction throughout your career, and if you're going to go out there and just be selfish, it's nothing good's going to come of it.
No, nothing. That's just bad karma. I don't like doing that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely not. So you're. It's funny because that was my next question. Who were your mentors as you come into these broadcast booths? Who were the mentors that influence your approach?
Well, I can't say I do have a mentor. And once again, I know Hector was amazing to me in that sense, but I didn't have the luxury of having a mentor to guide me. So I've been throughout the years one to help a lot of people throughout my career, and I feel fortunate that I've been able to do it and teaching different people training, so I feel like I've mentored a lot of people, and right now the people that work with me, I have a couple of guys that to this day, we're still working together, and it goes both ways. They make sure, like, if I'm wrong on something, they'll let me know, and
Okay.
we have that open communication within the team. But yeah, now I can talk to people like Jeff Joniak, and we'll have good conversations.
Wow.
Yeah. When you're able to just the Jeff, I
It's a
saw him
legend.
Bears game Thursday
Yeah,
night, and
Thursday. Yeah.
and he's calling me a legend. I'm like, dude, you're nuts. Like
Nowhere
you
near it.
like yeah. I'm like, this is like, so it's great people within the industry that have helped me.
Hmm.
When I was doing anchoring news at WBBM News Radio,
Yeah.
Felicia Middlebrooks was amazing for me. Keith Johnson, back to Jeff Joniak. So,
Hmm.
there was always people willing to help in that sense.
Hmm.
To be able to just, because at the end of the day, you look at, you think about, I'm in this big world, and there are high expectations, right?
Right.
And you got to make sure that you're able to fulfill those expectations.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and people don't understand, because people are just a viewer and don't understand the hard work that you have to put in.
Oh,
And speaking of
yeah.
the hard work, what is your pregame setup and pregame mode, and uh, uh, what do you have to set up for your, let's say for a Bulls game? What is your pregame before everyone gets there? What are you doing to prepare for this game?
Well, we're never off. Now, I'm always listening to different content. I'm always reading different articles. I'm always, like, for example, tonight when
Milwaukee.
they're in Milwaukee, so I'm always making sure that I'm on the game and watching, and so my prep. I'm usually there 2 hours, 2 hours and a half before game time, and within that, there's a lot that goes on. Not only preparation, but just in Espanol se dice aclimatarte, like just get into the mode
Acclimated.
of
Yes.
you're in the stadium, you're there. Whether it be, let's say I'm hungry today, I'm gonna go grab something to eat, but while I'm doing that, I'm reading something or I'm writing down. So my preparate my notes and whatnot. I grab a big folder and I write all the opposing players on it, just so that I have them big in front of me,
Okay.
and because we're high up, we're
Correct.
we're high up, so I got to make sure that I can see these players correctly, right? So so there's those little things. I guide myself a lot with that preparation, but I think that the preparation goes on all day, every day. When I'm driving, sometimes what I'll do is I'll shut everything off, right? But for the most part, when I'm driving, I'm either listening to true crime documentaries or
Something
or
completely different. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's just like completely different, right? Or just completely on sports, and not necessarily like sports radio. I'm on YouTube, man, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm on there, just different views from different parts.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I do the same thing where there's some days like sports is just overwhelming. You know what? I'm gonna
Yeah,
listen to a podcast that has nothing to do with this and just let that just erase everything in my mind so I can just be clear. So when I
right.
do go back to the sports, kind of clear headed, I'm ready to get in the zone, like
Of
you're saying,
course.
getting accumulated. So how did you find your voice? Because everybody has their own niche when they, your Harry Careys, your Hawk Harrelsons, your Steve Stones.
Right.
Everyone has their voice and their niche and approach. How did you find yours?
Man, so I had a real good program director. He came in, he was my first program director when I started radio was amazing. But I want to, no, he wasn't my second. He was probably like my third, fourth program director at that radio station. But he was the one that once told me, Miguel, you have a great voice. He says, why are you trying to impose your voice? Why are you trying to make your voice sound different when you have a great voice? And
Yeah.
and I was like, wait, what? I couldn't understand. I wasn't comprehending what he was telling me. And he's like, yeah, you're trying to change it in the inflection in your voice. And I was like, man. So he's like, you have to think of this. You have to think of when you have a conversation with someone, um, they're supposed to be able to know that that person they're having that conversation with, the same person they can hear on the radio. Not that you're on the radio sounding a different way, and then you come out and it's
Mm.
like it's a different voice, a
Yeah.
different style of speaking, right? So it kind of clicked for me then, and I was like, well, and since then, I've been able to manage myself in that way. Try not to be something that I'm not.
Hmm.
And if you hear a Pat Hughes speak, Pat Hughes is Pat Hughes in the hallway or on the mic.
Right.
That's
Okay.
yeah. So those are the things that you have to think about. Just not try to, and it's different, right? It's different when they tell you, well, you have to put that emotion behind your voice and the excitement, right? That's different than changing your voice. You don't want to sound different. You do want to have your regular voice.
Hmm.
However, you do want to put that excitement into it. So it takes time to really understand what it really means, but it's all about practice. You have to make sure that you hear what you're saying, and a lot of people don't like listening back to themselves, right? I do. I listen to my broadcast as much as I can so that I can make sure and go back and listen to, okay, this doesn't sound good. Okay, this could have been this way. You could have done this better, kind of deal. So, I'm one of those that I like to listen, and I like to make sure that I can become better, right, after every game.
I completely agree with you because if I go back and I listen to my first podcast, and I was interviewing Nikolai Wozniak, who the son of Michael John Wozniak, who was Jordan's security guard.
Hmm.
And I was nervous. I had no idea what I'm doing. And we got about 35 minutes of content, and then when I'm doing the post production, which I'm learning by myself, like you said, through YouTube,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I didn't have an intro. I just went into the interview, and I didn't set it up. So that's what I wanted to do a setup, and then I did a closing, and it sounds really
Right.
bad. And people are like, "Well, you can go back and edit. You have all the equipment now. You have a better voice." I'm like, "No, I need to be reminded that I started at the bottom and how much I've grown and how much the
Of
podcast has
course.
grown. Just to remind myself that, you know what, you can always do better. And, I'll listen to a show from 10 weeks ago to, 2 years ago, just to remind myself that I have taken the steps forward so I don't get complacent. Also, there's times that I
Yeah.
feel like I don't want to do this, but I'm like, I have to push forward and I cannot translate that into my voice. I have to be excited about what I'm
Yeah.
talking about,
No.
or else my listeners are not going to be
And
excited.
right, right,
Simple.
because specifically with a podcast, you have to have that consistency.
Yeah.
So I started my podcast, I want to say maybe 3 years ago,
Okay.
3 years. And I did 6 episodes, and I haven't recorded since. So the last episode that I did
You wouldn't have time for it
was,
now.
oh, yeah, man. So the last episode that I recorded was prior, like the day of or the day before opening day for 2021. That was
Okay.
the first year that I did the Cubs, the full time, all home games. So after that, there was like no time for me to record it up to this day. There's people that still, hey Miguel, when's a new episode coming out? So those are the things that at the end of the day, if you want to have something out there, you have to be consistent with, and hopefully somewhere someday I'll come back and do more episodes. My podcast is called My Radio Life, so it was just basically that, just
Yeah.
stories about my radio life.
That'd be great. I mean, Stacey King does that podcast. I'm like, where do you find the time? Chuck Garfien, same
Yeah,
thing, and I'm
yeah,
like, wow. Yeah, some of these guys post 2, 3 times a
yep.
week. I'm like, I don't see how you have the time for it. But
But here
yeah, go
they
ahead.
don't
No, go ahead.
have four teams that they're broadcast, five
That's
teams that they're
true. That is
broadcasting
very
for.
true. He's the hardest working man in Chicago sports at the moment.
Yeah.
So calling a dream sporting event is obviously like the,
Yeah.
the the biggest thing you want to do as a sportscaster. What events do you aspire to call, and why do they hold a special place in your heart?
Well, obviously, I want a World Series. I want the Cubs. I hope. I was like, man, why didn't I go in 2016? I started 2018.
Mhm.
But we've made some big strides
Yes, you
in the
have.
sense of the relationship with the Cubs, so that I know that once that happens, I'll be able to enjoy a World Series behind the mics. That would be amazing, right? And just because it's my team. Growing up, I watched the Cubs. I grew up a Cubs fan. My father took me to many games as a child, and
Okay.
and and after that, we still go to games together. Now I can't go to a game with him anymore, but he's still there. Right? He's still at Wrigley with my other brother, and sometimes my mother will go. Anytime I sing the seventh inning stretch, they're all there with me.
That's
So
great.
it's just a special thing, and just to be able to call something like that would be incredible. And I know that another thing, the Stanley Cup, that the Blackhawks are on their way. It's so amazing to watch that. We're you think about it now when
Hmm.
you look at Connor Bedard and what he's been doing. It's like this
Spectacular.
kid just adjusted to the league in a matter of nothing. And that if the Blackhawks put the right pieces next to him, we're going to have a championship soon, and not only one. So that's exciting in itself. And what else can I say? It's just those big moments. You live for those big moments as a broadcaster.
Hmm.
Those are the things that you want to experience.
So besides a local team, is there something else you would like to call? Maybe a World Cup, maybe a Super Bowl,
Uh,
Olympics.
well, yeah, those are always like, you think about, right, going on the national level. That would be amazing in itself. But I'm happy. I'm happy in Chicago. I love Chicago. I love everything about it. Even though I don't live in Chicago, right? But I work in Chicago, so so I'm happy there. I'm happy with that, and as a kid or as a teen, I loved wrestling growing up and boxing. So that would be something I would like to do, just a ring announcer
Yeah.
for one of these wrestling or boxing events. That would be just cool in itself. But no, the World Cup. I covered World Cup in 2014 in
Nice.
Brazil, so I got that fixed. That was amazing. Yeah, that was just unreal. Miguel, my program director, says, Miguel, do you want to go to Brazil? I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, all right, go get your
Passport.
visa. I was like, okay. And then he's like, well, I'll give you details later. I'm like, perfect. So I've done amazing things in my career with just those little side things that come about.
What's the biggest compliment you've gotten in your career?
Uh, my biggest compliment is when somebody comes up to me and says, I listen to you because I enjoy your enthusiasm, or there's a lot of people. So I have a regular show during the week that's from 10 to 12, and I get people that pretty much just say, hey, I love that you're on there and you're always singing, because I sing throughout my show. Like there's always some kind of singing. So it's just, when you get anybody that comes up to you and tells you, I listen to you, just with that, that's a compliment to me, because I feel that I have a great responsibility to bring these games to different people, and for the people that are barely, learning the sport of hockey per se, that
Hmm.
the responsibility is even greater, because now we get to be the ones that bring it into our community. So just anytime anybody says they listen to me, because they have so many options, so many different places that they can say, I'm going to listen to this over here.
Right.
But the fact that they're with me, like, for me, that's there's nothing better than it.
I can't agree more. I can't agree more. Someone says, "Hey, you had a great show last week," and I'm like, "Oh my God, you listen? Thank you." Like that's the biggest thing for me. I'm like, I
Yeah,
get happy. I'm like,
yeah,
"Thanks."
it is. It
It
is. Well,
go ahead.
I have one. I have one big
There
compliment.
you go.
So I did a show, Baseball Limas, with the Chicago Cubs Productions. We were nominated for an Emmy. We didn't win, but
Boo.
it was pretty cool, just because I know we were able to do some great things, and I did one episode with Christopher Morel, and I played back my home run call of his first home run of his career.
Oh wow.
And as he's listening to home run, then he yells, right as it was going to happen. He yells "La Boto," which is what I say.
Yeah.
And he was like, dude, he's like, every time that I play this video, I'm yelling "La Boto," and I'm like, dude, like, this is, for me, that the player is enjoying, that call. And Chris will message me, like, when he has a big home run call, home run or whatnot. He'll be like, "Hey, do you have the video? Do you have the call?" So it's pretty cool, that the fact that he enjoys the work that I do as well.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. And I like that you have that rapport with the players. Especially because it's been noted where sometimes the commentators and the sportscasters don't get along very well with some of the players, because sometimes they have to be critical of the product that's on the field,
Right, right.
and sometimes some players they get into their feelings, or they feel they're being misrepresentative. So I love it when there's an open relationship that you can have with a player or a set of players, that you say, you know what, I celebrate you as much as I can, and sometimes when you're struggling, I say, hey, he needs to get,
Oh yeah,
he needs to, ponte las pilas, get on it, let's go, yeah,
yeah.
let's go,
Oh
get
yeah,
on
no
get on a
doubt, no
horse.
doubt.
So if you can be that honest and they know you're not being malicious, I think that the relationship will just continue to grow.
Yeah, no, it's great, and all these young guys are great. I was able to get a couple of conversations with Pete Crow Armstrong,
Hmm.
with Nick Madrigal, these younger guys. It's always good to feel those guys out and just hear where their minds are. So it's always, I always try to make time to be down there during the batting practice and just get that feel. So that's part of, for example, for baseball, that's part of my 3 hours that I'm there. There's part where I'm there on the field and just conversations happening, whether it be with the players or even with the local press. Like there's always something, and you just want to be within that area.
Yeah, that's great. What is something that maybe you wish you would have known when you started in this field?
Uh, wow. I don't know. See, I think if you would have, if I would have known things, I probably would have been lazier. So I'm glad I didn't know coming in
Right.
because I've always had to hustle. I've always had to look for everything. And be able to do my own thing. And when I went into the first radio station that I worked in, my mind was like, oh, I want to be on air. That's all I want to learn. No, when I went in there, I realized that wasn't it. I realized that I needed to learn everything there is about radio broadcasting. So, and I've learned on my own. There's nobody that has sat down with me and said, Miguel, this is how we do play by play. Miguel, this is how
Hmm.
we do this. No, I've learned it all on my own. So I don't know. I don't know if I wish that I knew something before, because I think this makes it taste even better, that I've been able to grow on my own.
Yeah, yeah. Has your Spanish always been that good?
First language Spanish. My parents made sure that we knew how to speak Spanish
Hmm.
first, and that we were good at it, and reading and writing, and then we were put into English. So it was for me, it was first Spanish, and I actually lived in Puerto Rico for a couple of years and went to school out there. So went to school in Puerto Rico was just great for me. That was amazing, and just the experience of living in Puerto Rico is like, dude, man, you're talking about the island. It's
Yeah.
beautiful and everything about it. And yeah, so I'm very grateful to my parents because this has been, I've been able now to work in both languages. I've been able to be a news anchor at WBBM News Radio, and at the same time doing my stuff in Spanish. So it's been I'm very grateful to them.
Can you pick up both dialects and can you flip between when
Yeah,
you're having a
it depends
conversation
who
with
I
someone?
speak to.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it depends who I speak to. If I'm
Yeah.
speaking to my mom's side of the family, I'm Puerto Rican. And
Yeah.
and if I'm speaking to like a radio listener, or my dad's side of the family, I'm Mexican. Now, yeah, yeah. So it's been cool because also on weekends I do a shift on Latino mix. So there I use my Puerto Rican accent. It's a more that type of music.
Right.
So it's pretty cool. Just to be able to be different people.
No, I get it too because they're like, I'm Mexican and Puerto Rican too. So it's like, they're like, oh, but you
Yeah, yeah.
speak so proper. I'm
Nice.
like, what do you mean speak proper? You mean normal Spanish? And they're like, yeah. And then I'll speak to my Puerto Rican friends and I'm, rolling the R's and, not
Yeah,
putting any breaks between any words. They're like, wow, you can speak really
yeah.
fast.
That's awesome. Good stuff.
Oh man. Before we get out of here, I have a couple more questions and they're easy ones. What three
Yes.
words would you hope that other people use to describe you?
Oh man, amazing. No, I'm kidding. Just no, no. I think we all strive to be good people, right? And
Mhm.
I just want people to know that I try every day to just be kind to people and be caring and loving. Just a person that's all I want. I don't have any animosity towards anyone, and if people have it against me, I treat them with kindness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, what in your life, either professionally or personally, are you most proud of?
Um, I think being a good person. I think that in life, and this goes back to my parents. They are amazing people. My dad's a hard worker. My mom as well. The values that they instilled in us and my siblings and myself. I think it goes so much. It carries right in all of the areas of my life. and I try to be just like them. Just be nice people, good people, and that's about it.
That's awesome. Last question. What is your biggest failure and how did you overcome it?
Biggest failure. Um, I think we get one of those like once a broadcast. Like yeah, yeah. Um, I think the biggest one, it was an interview early on in my career, and it was one of those things that the artist was thrown into the studio. Hey, interview them, right? And it was a group of two sisters. It was two sisters named Hash, and so one of my questions was, "Where'd you guys meet?" And they said, "Well, at the house. We're sisters."
In the womb.
Just you overcome those little things. But no, I think in a personal level, when you think about failures, me specifically, when I was young, I made a lot of money, and as much money as I made, I threw all of it away.
Mm,
Whether it was a brand new phone, or I finished paying off my car and I bought one right on the spot.
yeah.
So just I think, and I don't call it a failure, just to learn a learning
Learning lesson.
experience,
Yeah.
how to be smart. With
Mm,
with financials, and taking care of your credit, just things like that. That you think about and you're like, man, I wish I would have done this differently, right? But you grow from it, and that's the main thing. There was a guy on a plane. I don't talk to people on planes. I'm that guy. I just want to put my headphones on. Don't talk to me. But there was one guy I talked to on a flight I had, and he said to me, Miguel, after we had a long conversation, he's like, in life, either you are winning or you're learning. You're never losing. So those are the things. Never take it as a loss. You're either winning or you're learning, and
that's a
and
great
I think
lesson.
that's the most important thing that we all should have.
There, very much. Which team's gonna win the championship first that you broadcast for?
I I'm torn between Cubs and Blackhawks, but I'm gonna say Cubs.
Before the Blackhawks? Okay.
I'm gonna say Cubs. I'm
All
gonna say
right.
Cubs. I was very strong on Blackhawks, but I think it's gonna be Cubs.
Hey, you know what? Either way, Chicago's going to celebrate whether you're on one side or the other side of the baseball field. Support each other. It doesn't matter. If one team is
Yes,
out, you got
sir.
to go support the other one. It's all good with me. So before you leave, go ahead and plug your shows and everywhere they can listen to you.
Yeah, so baseball Cubs, you can listen on MLB app. You can listen on Marquee Sports Network. Switch the audio over to SAP. 1200 a.m. is where we broadcast all the sports. Bears are on Latino Mix. The Bulls, Blackhawks, and Cubs are on 1200 a.m. And that's about it. Follow me on social media.
Where can they? What's your handle for social media?
Miguel's Voice on Twitter, and on Instagram and Facebook, Miguel Esparza Radio.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing your story, your insights. We look forward to hearing your voice resonate in the exotic
Thank
world
you.
of Chicago sports broadcasting. Miguel, you've been a pleasure to have on. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you once again.
A ti. Gracias. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
brother. Thank you. Thanks for listening. A big thank you to Miguel Esparza, the Spanish broadcaster of the Chicago Cubs, Blackhawks, Bears, and Bulls. Thank you, brother, for joining us and letting us get Inpodsicated with you. For our listeners, always thank you for chiming in, subscribing, and supporting. Next week, you'll have a brand new interview with another exciting story. So stay tuned and remember to be Inpodsicated.